This week on New to You, 3spooky5me, Part 1. Guys, come on, this is serious.
Yeah. It's 3 spooky for you. 5 you.
5 you.
So do we want to explain the title? Or is this just an Easter egg?
Yeah, please explain the title to me.
Isn't there it's when people are being really edgy, or if they're it's sort of tongue-in-cheek, like someone's like, yeah, you should just go kill yourself or whatever. People are like, oh man, you're just three edgy 5 me. You're just
No. Let's start from the beginning. Okay, so if you take the phrase too spooky for you, and you add 1 to the 2, it makes it 3 spooky, and you add 1 to the 4, it makes it 5. So
this is the show.
Yeah, this makes it even more. This week on New to You. This week on New to You, 3spooky5me, Candle Cove, Part 1, Candle Cove. Hey everybody, welcome to the New to You show. I'm one of your hosts, John Holt. With me this week,
Julian Cage.
Keith Allen Vincent,
Jocko Farino,
and Matt Schwartz.
All right, so great to have Matt and Jocko both on. This is a super experiment.
This is like spooky all-stars we got here, guys. I mean, for real.
3rd season, 5 guests.
Yep.
3spooky5me.
Oh, perfect. Makes sense. Yeah.
Got it.
Totally planned.
Whoa.
This is a media review podcast where we discuss media that's new to somebody out there for some reason or another. Usually to one of us.
Yeah, we're out there mining the depths of media so that you, the listener out there, can benefit from
shallow reading of it.
Exactly. From us shining a light on it, and you actually learning about it, because you're not going to learn about it from our show. Mm-hmm. You're just going to learn that it exists and that we watched it.
So the first thing I'm going to teach you is what 3spooky5me means, I guess.
Yes, please.
So
it starts with too spooky for you.
Well,
or for me, too spooky.
Yeah.
For me,
on the internet, when people are sniping at
it doesn't have to be the internet.
No, but that's the thing.
There were denim jackets that did this way before the internet.
Okay, but the idea being that you are even more to something for something than normal. So yeah. So you are 3 something 5.
So if you replace the too spooky, the word to with the digit
numeral,
2, and then the word FOR with the digit 4, and then you add 1 to each, you get 3spooky5me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're sacrificing literacy and sentence structure for
a really bad joke.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. For a pun. It makes sense, yeah.
Well, it's also...
Is it even a pun? I don't know.
I think it's more of a slight, where you're going, someone
Did you get it right? You get
someone
it?
tells
Guys?
you that ghost story that they had about their grandma, and then you're like, ooh, well, that's just 3spooky5me. It's that sort of thing.
Okay,
Oh.
so it's a catchphrise that everyone's saying actually all
Constantly,
the time, right? Yeah,
Yep.
that's what I mean.
And then they dab. I just dabbed.
Oh, no. All right. Bye. Have a good week.
Jocko, wait! No! Please come back.
Stop it! Just here's a fidget spinner and enjoy.
Okay, I'm back.
Oh, the fidget spinner got him back. Thanks, John. Quick thinking.
All right. Well, here we go. We got 5 guests or 5 hosts. So Matt, welcome back.
Thank you.
Last time we had you on was for Toad Road, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but was it the Halloween one last year?
No, we were doing weird.
What was the-
Weird true, weird
that's
fact or
right.
fiction.
Yeah, that's
Weird
right.
fiction,
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
We like all kinds of good spooky
Exactly.
Yes.
stuff. Matt, have you been keeping up with your pledge to see as many horror movies in the
I
theater?
see everything. All of it. Yes. It's been a great year for horror.
And apparently, Alamo Drafthouse is benefiting from that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
And Jocko,
Hey.
we have you on a lot, which is awesome because you're one of our favorites.
So happy to be here every single time.
All right. And you have been on both of our spooky episodes
Yep.
prior to this.
Did
So
Halloween 3.
we're just going to keep adding people to this
Yeah, sure. That sounds great.
until you guys take over the show.
Yeah.
Right. And we can finally retire.
Yeah, this is it.
We're the Menudo of podcasts.
Well, yeah. Oh, one of you is now always a host.
Yeah.
Okay,
Something.
that's fine.
One of us is free. We will draw the straws out.
Well, one of us doesn't have a microphone, so I wonder who it'll be.
I win.
Free at last.
The cold. I feel like there's a chill in the air. The wind's blowing a little bit more crisply.
Yeah, it's like 90
You can
in September.
when you walk here when you walk here, there's the crunch of fallen leaves. What does that mean? What's the season going on here? I think it's almost time for Halloween.
Hardware release. All the latest
iPhone 8,
hardware
baby.
releases coming. Those are dead iPhones you were walking on.
Do you remember last Halloween when we made jokes about?
No, we don't.
wait,
remember that, 'cause that didn't
maybe
happen.
it's the bones of all the North Koreans that were walking around.
Yeah, we made jokes that it would be so ridiculous if
If next year Donald Trump was
Yep,
our president.
yep.
Oh yeah.
we could
It would
tell
still be
the
ridiculous.
Future.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
It is depressing.
Since we have 5 guests, we're still sticking to 4 picks.
Yeah.
And actually, me and Jules, I mean, I made the pick, and then we both watched it. Which is that okay, Jules?
Yeah, no, it's very appropriate to the pick, actually. The
We're
more I think
twins.
about it.
We have to
That's
talk
right.
at the same time.
That's right.
We liked it. Oh, sorry. We're supposed to do the same.
Well, it's like I'm trapped in another dimension because I was bad.
Oh, nice.
The dimension without a microphone.
Yeah. So we're going to do 4 picks. So 4 weeks of super spooky. 4 weeks, 3spooky5me, 789. That's why 6.
Whoa.
That's why 6
So
is
many
scared
digits.
in both directions.
Oh boy.
Room 247.
Yeah. Anyhow, the pick. We'll get ready to.
You guys remember Candle Cove?
That show gave me the worst nightmares. You can make people do things.
It's not just a TV show. Kids will see it
These kids are hurting someone!
just like we did.
Welcome to Candle Cove.
Candle Cove. Did you guys check it out?
Absolutely.
We did.
Yeah, whole
All
thing.
right.
Totally.
Though I will disagree with what you said last week. For me, Sci-Fi did absolutely not stream. It depends on your who your cable provider
I bought
is.
it off. I bought it off of.
Yeah.
That's
Me
not a
too.
service.
It streams if you're, I think, on a computer and you
No, I-
access it through their website.
If you have the right
I was
provider.
on the
Only
computer,
certain,
but I was at
certain
work.
cable
Oh.
providers.
Yeah.
Like I was
yeah.
I was trying to stream it at work here. I didn't try it at home, but it just wasn't.
My provider was
didn't
not covered.
go. And
Yeah,
I tried
same
on the you were able to preview up to 3 things on the app with a code, but I couldn't get. Basically, Sci-Fi's whole system was a pain in the butt. So I
Well,
tried
no,
to
it
steal
makes sense. It
and then
makes
I
sense.
bought it.
I'm sure they have partnerships with certain cable providers, and,
Yes.
and if
Yeah.
they don't have that partnership, then you have to watch it on the cable provider.
Yeah.
As a person who works for the Universal, for NBC Universal, I feel like
You're
I have to say
sympathetic.
that.
You're
Yes.
sympathetic.
Yeah.
The views.
But I did. I bought it on iTunes and watched the first season. I had read Candle Cove, the short story thing, just on a creepypasta website or something.
So can we get to what creepypasta means? What is that?
So there's this whole thing where, especially this is more like 4chan or one of those short-term memory message boards where things cycle regularly. People will tell a story and then people archive those stories and copy and paste them back up into the feed.
So it's like telephone.
Sort of, yeah. Well, but it's copy pasted. So there's almost, unless someone's changed a specific
Verbatim.
detail, it's the same thing. And so that's called copy pasted or copy pasta is where that comes from. So then a story that is specifically creepy or spooky is creepy pasta. So it's basically horror fanfic or horror true stories.
So is the idea that people who go to this site add to it so it becomes a collaborative storytelling?
There are
thing?
some basically it's more of a genre born out of a format. So you have really that explanation of there's a feed of information that gets cycled out and lost, and that people keep resurrecting, save and resurrecting things and posting them again. So they're constantly refeeding.
But who posts it? The person the author, or
sometimes it's somebody entirely unrelated who just saved it and felt like it was time to put it up again to get discussion.
It's often the style of the story itself in some ways is what I
Right.
is
associate
what
with
makes it a pasta.
So similar to epistolary kind of novels. I mean, it's just it's a more modern, usually very short. I mean, often short shorts, but just holding that style of kind of, I don't know, I hate saying crowdsourcing, but yeah, but it often appears to be kind of this crowdsourcing of ideas into a story.
And there'll be like repositories for that where it's like someone sets up, they'll take a story or two stories and say, okay, we're actually going to make, like, there's a whole website that's the whole backstory is that there's these secret files, this like secret place where all these artifacts are kept, all these objects of power. And
we saw it's on Indiana Jones. It's a big warehouse.
But imagine if someone had written like a fake little article about, or a fake like report about each object, and some of those reports refer to others and some build like narratives, and you can just read through this list, and that's like a crowd built, I think it's like SCIP or something like that is the name of that repository. It's like a spooky thing with various spooky stories going on, and each one is supposed to give you like a creep out kind of feel. Like the creepypastas, some of the classic ones, there's one about like a haunted Pokemon cartridge that has like a ghost inside it and like kind of feels weird or heartfelt, or like, like Lavender Town, some extra.
Well, there's an urban legend about the SpongeBob SquarePants episode with Squidward shooting himself over and over again. And of course, like, they actually had to come out and debunk it. I mean, because so many people have heard about it at this point that these urban legends take on a life of their own.
And there's like a Mickey Mouse in Hell one too. Yeah, those are the ones that I love. I like unabashedly love. They get under my skin. It's very easy for me to make that logical leap, even for a moment, and say could exist. Of course, it doesn't.
So how does this start? Somebody is like on a thing and said, "Hey, you guys heard of that SpongeBob where the guy shot himself a bunch of times?" And then it just kind of comes up from time to time.
Some people will make a thread of it where like they'll have this whole story, right? Or say like, "Be me watching SpongeBob" in this like green text format is one of the like classic image board speaking formats. So it's like they'll tell this whole story like, "Be me watching SpongeBob, Squidward sitting on bed, like explaining this thing," and then someone else in the board might go, "Oh yeah, I remember that," and like plus it's like yes-anding the story, and then someone else takes that later and pastes that whole thing back up front, and then it might get added to again, and it can grow, and then that's where you get like your Slender Man, Jeff the Killer, like all these sort of meme stories can also have grown in a similar way, and from some creepypastas or with creepypastas included.
They're mostly like nightmarish vignettes more than full-form stories in terms of like narratives, but they pack a punch. I mean, so.
And you'll have people who will write parts, like someone will have like, here's part 1, here's part 2, and then someone else will, because they're bored and waiting for it, will write part 3, and everyone will go, "This is fake, this is shitty, this isn't as good." And like, but it might be enough to like survive the process. So there's like an ecology to it as well, which is interesting.
And then all these sort of archetypes get sort of become character. I mean, Slender Man is written about by millions of people now, and
and now there's actually, I forget the name, I think it's called Creepy Lemons or something like that. So it's like erotic creepypasta. And there's like a whole subset of
course,
like people who,
I'm surprised that it wasn't the first thing to come out.
Who are like thralls to Slender Man.
Add shipping in there, and it's just like the internet.
It's like people who are thralls to Slender Man, meaning that like he'll like sexually assault them in like horrific ways, and they'll sexually assault each other as thralls, but they won't be killed by Slender Man, and that's part of like, it's like their prize and their punishment at the same time. And these stories about that like weird cultish adulation.
The internet.
Magical.
Exactly.
So
I guess I really just can't picture any of this. I guess I have never hung out on those. What did you call it? What kind of a board? You said it's
like I'd say like, what was it, like an image message board or like an image server board?
Yeah, like 4chan.
4chan is that, yeah.
But
Reddit less so.
Yeah.
But Reddit will sometimes like repost things from those sources.
And you'll have people who are writing stories into that format.
I like to read them on Reddit or on a sort of a last stop. It's easier for me to follow once everyone's decided this is the best selection of this. I put as a pick once, one of our episodes, might have been last Halloween, Everyman Hybrid, which was this long YouTube series that these like goofy kids made that started as like a workout video series. And in like the background, you could see Slender Man walking by, and it was really well done. And this long, like 800 episode series. I'm going to re-mention that. Check it out again. If this is all interesting to you, definitely check out this YouTube channel, Everyman Hybrid.
But it's 800 episodes of them working out?
And then, so it starts, the first 3 episodes are these like really low rent, like supposed to be low rent.
Right.
Videos, homemade of like college kids. They're like in college, like describing ways to like, get some extra exercise when you're, going for a walk and stuff. And there'll be like a figure in the background. And then it really complicates itself really nicely where it's like, episode 7 or something. They're like, okay, we got, you caught us, our little joke. We had Ben dress up as Slender Man. But whoever's messing with us, please stop. And then it like turns like the story progresses from there that they think that people are picking on them because they were pretending to be Slender Man, but it's that like Slender Man noticed them and now is stalking them. And
cool.
There's like a professor involved. It's ridiculous. It's great.
Within this format, there's also like there were still people who were blogging like horror fiction, and so Chris Straub, who was a comic guy, like a web comic guy, that's where he came up through. Like he was doing Chess Nightmare, I think is the name of it. I don't know, Chex Nightmare. He did a bunch of comics. Chainsaw Suit is probably the biggest one he's known for, and he's part of that crew of like the PvP Penny Arcade network of guys. He has a horror comic called like Brood Hollow, which is grown up out of the Icker Falls blog that he writes, which is his like short fiction, but from a spooky bent blog. And this short story,
Candle Cove.
Yeah, I lost the thread. Candle Cove was born on that site, and it's written as a message board discussion between people just talking about a show that they kind of remember as kids vaguely, and plussing each other as they go, and realizing like the punchline being, hey, the TV was just static kind of thing. And they remember all these shows that actually aired, and the spooky thing is like all these kids had a shared like
hallucination of
some
sort.
They had a mass psychosis of remembering the show separate from one another at the same like specific discrete time period, and that their parents remember that like, no, there was nothing on the TV, that you were staring at snow.
When you say it started on his site, did he write like both ends of that conversation?
He wrote the whole thing.
Yeah. So it started off as like he's kind of emulating the creepypasta.
Like, or using like it's like a hypertext writing format where you take like, someone made like a whole story of this where they took different like the new HTML5 stuff and wrote this like futuristic, if everyone had nanites or whatever, playing football, where people are like actually like running across entire states to play football against one another, but all using message boards and like weird visual feeds to tell these stories all inside a website in a weird way. This is just like a little snippet of that. And then it was picked up.
This is him taking this format and making something out of it.
Right.
To emulate
using it to tell a story, because there's a certain rhythm to it that people understand. And then you go for the series, Jules. Tell about the series.
Okay. They optioned the story?
Yeah.
And they expanded it from there. Do we go into full-on detail? Do we spoil?
I think it's okay to... Well, so the story, the like short story, is the first episode.
Yeah,
I don't think I don't know if we have to get into the like what. I don't know. Whatever. Who cares? Go watch the whole thing if you really watch the whole thing.
Yeah. Hit pause right now. And
I mean, really, like if we just like steer clear of that, some of the devices they use at the very end are kind of obnoxious. Like if we kind of stop before the last episode or something,
we can avoid serious spoilers.
Yeah.
So essentially, they take that simple short concept and just flesh it out, take it further. And so it starts with the lead character who's a child psychologist and he's on an interview show. And from the get-go, it has kind of a creepy, you kind of have that. They do a good job of building up a creepy vibe, and you can tell like something's a little off from the get-go. And so he's going home back to his hometown where he grew up, and it's clear he's been away for a long time. And then, like he said, it's sort of a recreation of that story in real time, where he comes back to the town and is talking and has dinner with old friends, and they start talking, hey, you remember that show? As he comes back to the town, the show starts reappearing, the show called Candle Cove, and it's like kind of a cutesy, low-rent puppet show that's pirate-themed. The images from the show are generally like fairly innocuous and like kind of silly, really, and kind of charming almost. But the context in which they appear is always like kind of off, and then they kind of like hold on things in a weird way that kind of add to the creepy factor. So the children in the town he came from start seeing this, and he catches like one of his friend's daughters like just having seen it, and that's when he's like the memory's triggered, and he starts talking to his friends about it, and then it unravels from there. Part of what I didn't actually read the original story, but are there murders part of it in that one?
I don't think
No.
so.
Okay, so
The original story is purely the idea of basically it's like what Shazam with Sinbad, right? Whatever the movie is that people all remember existing that didn't exist.
Yeah.
It's effectively that concept of people coming together to remember something that had been long buried in their memories.
Gotcha. So they also added to this fact that so back in that time period when everybody was having this mass or seeing this show, which they don't realize at this point was a hallucination, there were also a series of murders, and they sort of slowly dole out more and more information to build it up and to fill in the story, and that's a lot of like really they don't add like a ton more, but they really like dole it out very slowly and really stretch it out. I think it's really well made, well acted for the most part, but just they do a great job of building this tension, this creepy atmosphere. But I think it loses steam at the end a little bit, like feels a little.
Yeah, it goes a little loose, especially because like the first few episodes are pretty tight. It seems like they definitely they're stretching it for as far as they could without breaking it, and they still even if we were to spoil it, there are certain things that don't get answered, and that's cool. Like that's nice. Yeah. They answer a lot of stuff, but there are some things where you're like, where does this weird Cenobite-esque creature come from? Like, what's the deal?
There's a lot of like cool, creepy visual stuff that's just added in because it's just cool and creepy, and like you said, like it's not really necessary. It doesn't feel necessary to the story, and it just feels like, oh, we would just want to like throw this in because it's cool. But some of that visually is some of the like my favorite stuff, and the more scary stuff. So in addition to the puppet show, they start showing kind of more fantastical kind of creatures, let's say, that are tied in. But there's such a like stark contrast to the like puppet show. Like there's so much, they're straight up horror basically. But like really, really nice designs. Like they're really like neat looking creatures, and so it kind of creates this strange. I feel like they could have pushed the show a little further at times, like into the spookiness, like to kind of bridge the gap between the two things. Because there were moments where like when they would show images from the show and it's supposed to be creepy, where I'm like kind of giggling because it's like just silly, like. But it's kind of fun that there's that tension, between those two things.
And like you're saying, I think the acting was well earned. This is where I'm going to close off on this point and let people get in here. The acting, I think, was like pretty good. There's some story beats. Specifically, there's a relationship between this guy who's come back and his high school or his childhood sweetheart, and this whole like emotional affair and all this stuff. And it just seemed tacked on, and like this is a reason to up the stakes without like real, like they had enough time. It's a TV show. They could have made it like count a little bit
more organic.
Yeah, and made it sell, and it just didn't quite get there for me. There's just a few like odd things like that, but
which is weird in TV because they've gotten so good at that stuff. You know what I mean? They've gotten so good at like making those things work over long extended periods of time that there are whole shows that are just that.
I don't know. I actually thought that part of the show's strength was that it felt very natural. I mean, they definitely, everybody cast in it, it's very quiet and natural. One of the things is that if you've read the book, not the movie, but if you've read the book, it follows a similar structure in that every other scene is told in the past, and then flashing back to the present where similar stories are happening concurrently and you're finding out more and more about each, which I think is a great structure, and they definitely cast great kids in that role.
Great child actor.
But like what you said about like the sweetheart and stuff, I was like, actually, I feel like they're kind of breaking the rules about how much you follow traditional tropes. I thought the show peaks in its 4th episode, actually. And then the thing is that I'm not going to ruin anything, but I will say I think from a narrative point of view, the whole thing ends actually correctly. I just think the execution in the last couple episodes is a little almost predictable and a little not as ballsy as the first 4 episodes are.
Yeah, and just really feel stretched out and just there to add more cool, creepy imagery.
And it's like a trick for trick's sake, a little bit, where it's like, oh, you thought it was done. Flash back into our flashback to flash you back to what was flashing.
And it's also, you see it all coming from a mile away. I mean, I did, and I'm not like the best TV psychic or anything, but you know what I mean? Like,
well, that's what I mean. Like I said, it ends, it's correct, because they don't do anything unfair.
Right.
But it's a little predictable where the rest of the show isn't. Yeah. But I will say, I give the show a lot of credit for doing something that you don't see. I mean, as someone who has drunkenly hate-watched every episode of American Horror Story for the last 5 years, it's great that, unlike American Horror Story, this has both, horror and story. And it's actually... They really tried to do some. I think it should have been 5 episodes instead of 6. Is what I really think.
Agree, yeah.
But I give them a lot of credit, and they take a pretty small concept and they flesh it out. And they definitely are. It's so quiet that I do think it is. I wouldn't say it's scary, but it got under my skin in certain areas, especially with a lot of the stuff in the past more than in the present.
Yes.
But I give it credit. I mean, it's enough that I would, what's the series? Channel Zero? Is that the name of the series overall? Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely would, give it another try, and it certainly is not anywhere nearly as bloated as, say, American Horror Story or something like that. So,
and I think that bears mentioning that this is called, what is it called? Zero.
It's Channel Zero is the series name,
and it's kind of like American Horror Story in that every season of it is a kind of a new,
And in fact, just to jump to that real quick, the reviews on the second season, from similar people who had actually similar notions to where we're at about the season of the first one, they're saying the second season has more heart and is actually really solid.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So worth checking that out. And from I read it into a little of the story, and it's very Toad Road style, where it's there's a haunted house, and if you can get through all 9 rooms of this thing, and they get incrementally worse, and so that's the story.
I'll also say it was a little. I actually surprised me that it was a sci-fi show, just because I love sci-fi, but it definitely was quieter and grittier and a little more naturalistic than I actually expected going into it. So I dug it.
Yeah, they didn't overdo the monsters.
No.
Yeah, and they really like you said, they really grounded the characters and the setting so that the fantastical elements really stood out. And
gave them more impact.
Yeah. So Jocko, what about you? You got to get through it?
Yeah, I watched all 6 and was actually just completely blown away. I think that I have the same notes that everyone has, sort of that it lost a little bit of steam. From a, sort of looking at it as a script, it looks like it was written as a full story, and then they cut it up into chunks, and sort of the 6th episode was almost all resolution. And so you don't have that exciting climax in the 4th and 5th episode. That's my only complaint. Everything else is pitch perfect for me. I totally agree with you about American Horror Story, that, my fiance and I were big fans of American Horror Story for the first season, and then for Coven. This is what we wanted that to be. More focused, scarier, I think scarier, less boo, less things jumping out at you, or corny monsters, sort of, but more intellectual, more even philosophical in some ways. Less ableist. I think that's a big and sort of noted concern with American Horror Story, is the crazy person. They had a whole season called Asylum. Yeah. So there's some ableism things going on there as well, if you want to look at it from that perspective.
So just before you move on, ableism refers to what exactly?
Just the idea of that, painting somebody with a mental illness as a slobbering maniac who has a knife and is going to rip you apart. That whole idea.
Right. And they skirt the edges of it, but they definitely try to pull away from it. There's those kind of flashes of him cutting into his own arm and noting, which is also kind of shown as edgewise, that he's taking pills and he had just come out of the asylum, and you kind of get the edges of that.
But it's not.
But he's not.
Yeah, there's something a little classier about it. I don't know what it is.
Well, I think it's also that he's the smartest one in the room. Yes. I mean, the point is, it's okay. It's actually okay to have some of those tropes if ultimately the person is the one that really knows what the hell's going on.
And he's not actually crazy. It's just that crazy things have happened to him.
Right. Anyway, that was all to say that I was completely blown away. We started the first episode, my fiance and I, and just found that opening scene, that little button, just completely drew us in. Where he's basically just on a Charlie Rose style talk show, and the phone rings, and it's a child saying, "When are you going to come back?" basically, and it's just. The mood was great. It felt very intense. And then there's another thing that we love that really, for me, hammered home just how much attention was paid to this show. And I knew from the start that, this was going to be my type of show. The title? I don't know if this hit anyone else, but the way that dark gray, Channel Zero Candle Cove hit on a flat, on the screen. Every episode that it hit, it's its own little surprise, because when it hits, it's oh, that's a beautiful scene that we're seeing. That's a moody vignette, of usually just a landscape. and then pow, this like beautiful font, this like really clean. It just has direction and style.
Classy. It's classy, yeah.
Well, that's happened on a couple shows lately. The Last Man on Earth started doing that a couple years ago, and it's just like it's always nice. You know, and you have a cold open, and that's always just like a neat exclamation point on the cold open, and it always looks really nice.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even the gore is pretty limited. I mean, I wonder like some of it, like, because they have like light titillation and gore, where you'll see like side boob or something, or like a man butt, and that's kind of it. Like, I think it's that like we're not late night cable quite kind of thing. Like, we're not HBO or Showtime. We're still like UHF style cable right now. So they like, you know, when someone gets their throat slit, for instance, it's not like paint the walls. It's kind of like it's done far away. It's done off the edge. I mean, the creepiest stuff though, because of that, is when they do show a little of it, and when you just see like kids tipping, like just gravity taking over, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely also use sound to convey horror, which I love. I mean, definitely there's a bunch of things where things are happening off screen where you're just hearing the noise of it happening, and it's actually way more horrifying than if you were on like American Horror Story watching a terrible, you know, stupid, gory scene. You know, whatever's in your mind is going to be way worse than what you're going to be able to see on screen.
And I think that's kind of like a tip of the hat to the whole like kids element of this, in that as a kid, those are the things that are the most frightening. When you're just in your room trying to sleep and you hear something, you know, it's kind of playing with that aspect, I think.
I will at least jump in and say, in defense of American Horror Story, if you're going to watch any of it, probably just like the hotel one is the most like over the top, silly, like bloodbathy one, where they're just like, it's Lady Gaga, it's just like Baroque. Just that's the silly, like if you want like a fun, silly vampire ghost story, go watch Hotel. You'll be fine.
Cool.
Like,
yeah, and I mean, all this is to say that I love Coven. I love the season Coven, which is about witches, and Stevie Nicks is in it. It really hit me where I wanted it to hit me. Not for everyone. But.
Well, I always wonder how that show continues to get such good casting. It's pretty amazing.
Oh my God! I mean, with Coven though, I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, I just can't. I mean, the problem with here's my issue with. Sorry to derail it. My problem with where Coven really started, I think the show going off track, is where I could tell that they stopped writing the show from beginning to end before it aired.
Yes, okay,
because there's an element of Coven where literally like Patti LuPone like waltzes into the show for no reason, and I really picture Ryan Murphy running into Patti LuPone in like the supermarket. She's like, "I love that show," and he's like, "Oh, we'll write you on the show. You'll be some crazy religious person. We'll give you a hot sun. The gays will love it."
Just come by on Thursday.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, and you know, comes on for a couple episodes, get rid of her, no consequence.
Yep.
So I mean, of course I love the people. I mean, I love, you know, Angela Bassett, Kathy Bates, Jessica Lange, and I like actually the way it's directed. My problem is it's not. I just can't deal with the story aspect.
Right.
Yeah, that's like the Freak Show one. Just the style wise, it was a blast.
Absolutely.
And like,
well, aesthetically, it's always nice.
Of course.
Right. And all the nods to like Todd Browning, like all the little like things, and the soundtrack. Some of it's just like irreverent and fun. Like they're doing Nirvana covers and like Lana Del Rey, Jessica Lange, like covering that stuff. It's just like it's silly and fun, and then you get like, oh, that's a shitty clown. I'll get past this part. Like you just kind of, there's a whole lot of stuff you need to hand wave to get past it. Like the cult one, watching the trailer for that, I was like, this is popcorn.
It's right.
I'm not gonna get. Supposedly the
They've
second
episode
embraced that. I feel like is supposed to be good, but no.
I feel like they've embraced it now. They're just like, that's what we are. We're just kind of like a fun house, like a spook house kind of thing.
And maybe it's totally unfair to compare these two, but they're the only two strictly horror. I mean, Black Mirror isn't exactly this, right?
No, Black Mirror is Twilight Zone mixed with technology.
There's these are the only two, I would say, traditionally
serialized
horror serial television shows on television right now. But stylistically, that's the only thing they have in common in a lot of ways.
Well, I do like that both of them kind of have embraced this kind of anthology thing where it's just like a new season, new story. I always think that shows benefit from that, even if it's a show that's kind of gone off the rails every season.
Especially with horror, because like I would have a hard time with a horror series that has to span multiple seasons. I feel like you just can't keep that up.
Yeah, you can't maintain.
It's tough. Like it's nice to just be able to do like.
Jules, you didn't like Scream 5? What's the deal?
Or was it Scream Queens? Or
well, that's
but those are
not coincidentally same
TV
person.
Scream.
But those are movies, it's like.
Well, there's TV shows.
No, Scream
too.
Queens. No, Scream Queens was Ryan Murphy's comedy slasher spinoff of American Horror Story.
Yeah, I did watch the pilot or whatever.
Which also had a great cast.
Jamie Lee Curtis,
Yeah,
fantastic,
unbelievable.
But yeah, I mean, terrific cast again, and again, well done, but just terribly written.
Yeah, but then you can't say it's well done.
Well
executed.
Yeah, exactly.
Competently made, poorly written. Yeah, but it's interesting that you brought up It because I kept coming back to It. While watching
it's
this
clearly,
as well.
27 years in It, 28 years in this one or whatever. I mean, there's clearly some.
It's a person of a certain age looking back at his childhood and sharing these repressed memories with others.
Yeah, it's like there's It, a little bit of like maybe Carrie with like anger and kid psychology and pent up rage, and then
Nightmare on Elm Street, really too, if you think about it.
Poltergeist for sure.
Yeah.
So there's just a few and like I was saying, maybe a little Hellraiser with the monster.
Oh, you mean what? Oh, I thought you were pointing out these things that had this similar like cyclic.
Well, they're also cyclic, but also having like things that were pretty heavily referenced.
Yeah.
Like throughout, which was nice still, and I think It is still like the standout because like taking pirate puppets and all this stuff and making them into the villain, which is like when you see the true villain, it's like a pale shade of what the real monster is.
I wish there had been a clear. That's the only thing in the story that disappointed me. I wish there had been a clearer connection between the show and
the thing
that's ultimately responsible for everything, and that was a little.
But that's so hard to do because I mean, I didn't see the new It, but in the old It, I felt like such a drop of the ball when you see the thing and it's just this big like bug type creature and you have to manually physically kill it. I always thought it was so much better when it was just a mental thing. I think so.
Tongues.
So that's
nodding.
Yeah. So that's always so hard to pull off.
That's true.
Historically, so.
Yeah. But I really. It also like I think Stranger Things, is also like a big mashup remix of a whole bunch of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's not super original, but it's well done. I felt like though it felt fresher somehow than this. This felt too much like It a little bit. Like I feel like it just so much like It. Like I couldn't stop comparing that. And I mean that's how you can explain it, and that explains a lot of it.
Yeah.
So that would be my only like small gripe, but I really enjoyed it. I'm nitpicking it, I think, because I really liked it.
And when you say you enjoyed it, you mean Candle Cove, not It.
Yes.
Got it.
I enjoyed.
But I enjoyed the original It as well.
Yeah, I love It. The original
but I didn't see.
It.
I didn't see the new one.
Yeah, I'm afraid to see the new one because I like the old one so much.
The old miniseries or the book?
Yeah, both.
I never read.
I really liked. I mean, Tim Curry as that creepy clown is just like. Just one of the scariest things ever. Like I would imagine him popping up, and it would really freak me out. Like for a long time after I saw that miniseries, it's hard to beat that.
Yeah, on the so because the new It movie is out on the internet, you keep seeing all these posts of I don't know if it's guerrilla marketing or just people doing these hoaxes that are supposed to look like advertisements for It. But they'll just randomly put balloons on like sewer grates and things like this, and I was just like, "That's so smart," but also like I would pretty much freak out.
Did anyone see the new It?
Yeah.
What did you think?
I love Stephen King. I have issues with the book, and I think it basically has all the strengths and a couple other weaknesses of the book, but it's only half the story. The second half will come out in 2019.
Oh, it's the like young.
So this is the kids' version. So unlike in the
book, it's like the miniseries, which it was almost split.
Correct.
In half
so instead of the book, which is every other scene, which is what Candle Cove does, and I think does correctly, this one is the kids' story. The adults are later. It's really scary. It's got a bunch of really scary scenes. I'll be on. I adore Stephen King. I think in both cases, the book and the movie, to me, the parts are greater than the whole. Which is it's got a bunch of scenes that you'll never forget, and it's really well done. I mean, I definitely highly recommend it. I'm not a big fan of the original miniseries outside of Tim Curry. I mean, I don't think it holds up too well. You may want to go back.
It probably doesn't.
You may want to go back and destroy your childhood memories by watching it and be like, "Ooh, Harry Anderson from Night Court." So,
but such a ladies' man.
Remember that one minisode where like they just scream the whole time?
Exactly.
This is battery acid.
So I don't think it will ruin. It's very different from the original miniseries.
Yeah.
And
but you guys, when we were watching it, like it never
was
aired.
just
It was just static.
Exactly.
I wish that were true of Tommy Knockers.
Aww. Was that Jimmy Smits?
I don't remember. It was
the
terrible.
What I'll say is that they're very different, but once again, the smart move here was casting kids who are actually 13 and 14.
Yeah.
And unlike I think one of the strengths again about Candle Cove is that when you have stories about kids, oftentimes the adults are not fleshed out as well, and you often have this issue. And the adults are almost non-existent.
Yeah.
It's very Charlie Brown, which
Yeah.
is like, wah, 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 off to the side, and then you've got the kids. But I think one of the things Candle Cove did correctly was I kind of thought all of the parts were written really well, and especially is it Fiona Shaw, the mother,
the mom.
who is just like an amazing actress who really I think grounds the entire series in a way that you really buy into some of the emotional investment going on, which I don't know if I would have gotten from some of otherwise without her.
And you really get it is really interesting to see that angle of the impact it has on the adults, on the parents.
Yeah.
And what it's like to be a parent in that situation. And I think her story is like the most heartbreaking of them all. Like and the hardest. She's kind of the hero of the
They're smart to focus. I mean, they're smart to focus on several different generations and to look at how anything that happens impacts everybody around it. As opposed to usually with kids' stories, it's told specifically from the kid's point of view, and you're within that vacuum of this is what the kid's going through and experiencing and what it's like to be around it. So I think they did some things differently. I give them credit.
Well, I think what you were mentioning about the parents aspect too, I think is another thing that they did pretty well in Stranger Things as well.
Yes,
having the
for sure.
parents be a part of it.
Yeah, Jocker, any thoughts
on? I think that specifically the idea of it affecting everybody is really a product of where we've gone, how we've grown up with these kids' stories. When I grew up, I loved stories where no one believed the kids, and normally those
because you felt that way.
Exactly.
I felt that way.
Yeah. Because they don't believe anything.
Don't get it.
They don't understand. Yeah.
And kids like me who grew up and are now creating are keeping that core, but with the sort of view of having
I
grown
am
up,
an adult,
right? And saying, but what if it did affect the people around? What if they did eventually listen? And how much more interesting?
They listen right from the get-go,
right?
And run out and die, and now the kid has to deal with the fact that they just killed their
They're
parents.
an orphan.
So I love. I
that
really
movie is
love
called Time Bandits.
Yes, it's evil.
I really love how this whole genre of kid horror for adults, right? So that's what this is. It's not kid horror. It's not the Goosebumps movie. It's kid horror for adults, starring kids. But I think
tapping into childhood memories.
Yes, I think it's one of my favorite genres.
It's like
of
the
horror,
Guitar Hero
sure.
or like rock band of the There's no secret why there's so many like Weezer songs on Rock Band and Guitar Hero. It's because it's not appealing to kids. It's appealing to the grown-ups.
Right.
I assumed it was just their licensing fees were way cheaper.
Not Weezer, bro. They're top dollar.
Yeah. Any last thoughts on Candle Cove before we go out?
Music. Interesting music. Nice, subtle music. Never tried to do anything that it wasn't supposed to do.
So subtle, I didn't really notice it.
Yeah.
Body horror. There was like just the right amount for me.
Yeah.
Where it's like that teeth thing. People have like big teeth issues.
I do.
Yeah.
And like the whole like the teeth twin was just really fun and like just. I mean, sometimes it's kind of like, wow, those people have preternatural strength to just like yank those teeth out. But I guess if you have no inhibitions or whatever, you just go for it.
I will say, as someone who actually like gets physically nauseous at stuff with teeth, after like the first episode, I was like, I'm not gonna be able to finish this. It's gonna be terrible. But actually, I was able to. It's again, thankfully, due to mostly using sound and off-screen
like a level of
implications.
taste.
It actually, I was like, I can't believe I got through it, but I did, and it was great, and it's horrifying, but something I could actually watch again as well.
Yeah. Your teeth thing is well documented on our show. I think it was mentioned in 2 other shows.
Wait,
so, yeah,
is that true?
You definitely have mentioned it before.
Wow,
because I think
it really is the one thing I can't. Yeah,
you brought up the movie Teeth. I think.
Oh, oh yes. Well, that's different. So.
And you brought up the French movie where they were eating, where it's like cannibalism, and I think you said there was some teeth things in there.
Okay. Yeah. See, I'm good about warning people. Teeth people, you can watch Candle Cove. It's okay. It's okay. You can do it.
You'll be fine.
You'll be fine.
Teeth people of the world, unite!
Exactly.
Anything to flag for people who anything that would trigger somebody?
Like a trigger warning? Teeth.
Teeth people would be fine.
If you worry about kids, this is a problem.
Yeah, dead kid stuff.
Yeah.
If you're averse to, I guess, good storytelling, you don't want to watch this.
If puppets,
if
that really gets you.
Exactly.
Oh well, yeah.
Yeah, dead kid stuff.
Yeah.
if you're averse to, I guess, good storytelling, you don't want to watch this.
If puppets,
yeah,
that really gets you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh well, yeah.
If you're afraid, we didn't touch on this, but if you're afraid of lonely men at the local television station, it's a very, very alarming scene in the middle of the series that they never come back to.
I know. I
So
really
weird.
wish that had come back.
It's so good.
I really wanted that.
That actor crushed his 7 minutes.
He'll get his
Shoot
own
up the
show.
scenery.
Yeah.
I wonder if I have to look at picture. Maybe that was like Chris Straub or something.
Yeah.
Maybe it was
Exactly.
like maybe.
No, I don't think it was.
Yeah, but that was pretty. He had made his own like fan fiction. That the whole setup of that scene
Yeah.
is pretty hilarious
Amazing.
too.
Yeah.
And then it's like 40 seconds of him just like staring and breathing.
Uh-huh.
It's so good.
That's amazing.
It's perfect.
Yeah, that was really well done. Yeah. So
Well, so we should move on. It did clowns, and it scarred a generation of kids with clowns. I would have to say that Poltergeist scarred me on fried chicken, trees outside the window, clowns under the bed. So
Swimming pool
what are the
holes.
things? Yeah, exactly. Indian burial grounds. What were the things that what are the things that are going to scar the next generation from this show?
I think that's where like it didn't quite gel into that one image. It kind of
think
diluted that a little bit.
that bowl full of mushrooms.
Yeah.
Like I was fixated. That was like I was
It
like,
was
there's
very
gotta be
odd.
like a dead body part that those mushrooms have grown on. Like otherwise, why give somebody a bowl of mushrooms?
was very odd.
Or the
Yeah.
I don't even know how to describe that. Never mind.
the chomping.
Yeah, or the snack, the midnight snack. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole teeth thing was probably the
Maybe
most
that's
visceral.
the takeaway. The teeth. Yeah, I can see that.
Gum, gum, gum.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, the sound effects really like.
Oh my gosh.
He
Yeah.
was like a chittery monster the whole time.
That whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my
But I feel like I've heard another chittery monster that was
Probably
similar, but
like
this one,
that.
but it was really great.
I think my favorite scene for me was when the daughter walks up into the attic, like that whole moment, and those moments where they use
Yeah.
darkness
Yeah.
to real effect,
That
and then she
actress.
translocates like 400 miles.
Yeah.
That for me was like, whoa, that was the weird. That was my like standout weird moment.
And
It
that
wasn't like scary, but the use of the darkness with the like,
Right.
all really worked. Sorry, go on.
No, sorry. That actress, I meant to bring her up as well, who plays the daughter, the little girl. She's definitely the youngest actress, the youngest, actor on the set. She completely blew me away. She was so scared and emotive, and I mean, she must be 5, maybe 6, who plays the main
No,
character's
she's like
daughter.
25. She's like a
Oh,
very
wow.
serious
Whoa.
glandular disorder.
Oh, good for her. But she was amazing. Totally amazing.
She's Zelda. What's it? Zelda.
Her name is Abigail Pniowski.
She's great.
Of the Baltimore Piniowskis? But that's the show.
Yeah. So Sci-Fi has Candle Cove. It's part of their Channel Zero. It's the first season, 6 episodes. It's available on iTunes, probably available on Amazon.
It is.
And hats off to this was the like maiden voyage of
Yeah.
Channel Zero, and
Yeah.
well done.
Mm-hmm. So that's real. It's real nice. There's good 44-minute episodes. It's pretty solid all through. We have picked it apart a little bit, but I think we all kind of liked it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Totally.
definitely.
Highly recommended.
Highly recommend. Yeah.
And like I was saying, reviews so far on the second season, which I think it's been opted for a third and is in development on
Great.
the third. The second season is supposed to be really good already. So check out Channel Zero and Candle Cove, and you can go read the short story by Chris Straub on ickerfalls.com, I believe is the name of his blog.
You'll find links to all of it on our website.
Yeah.
Kids
So
are hurting
let's go out of there.
someone.
Let's tell that.
Everything that's happening now, everything that happened in '88 is back. What do you want?
Such a question, there are many possible answers, such as hard work.
Feel I'm alone in this whole of existence. I know it takes time, but I'm losing my persistence. The distance is too far to fetch, so I sketch on pages and hope that some catch the thoughts of my inverted worded music. No trial and error, just emotion when I do this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to the New You Show. As one of your hosts, John Holt. You can find me on Twitter at Lord Johan, on Instagram at board_ghost, and you can find my RPG podcast at boardghost.com. And I have a new book book reading podcast, a read-along book club podcast coming out at the end of October called Wound and Stab, and that'll be on at woundandstab.com. We're aiming to launch it near the end of October, last week or two.
Cool.
Jules, where can people find you?
I'm Julian Cates. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at BeautifulJules. And how about you, Keith?
You can find me on earthlingkeith.com. How about you, Jaco?
You can find me on everything at my name, because it's weird,